Born in December of 1485 in Spain, Catherine or Catalina was raised with an exceptional education for a woman of her time. Daughter to one of the biggest power couples of the era, Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, she was betrothed to Arthur Tudor at 3 years old. She married him in 1501, but only a few months later Arthur died, the marriage supposed to be unconsummated. After a period of uncertainty, she married Arthur's younger brother Henry in 1509, becoming the Queen of England and the first wife of Henry VIII. I want to use this doll for her. My biggest issue is Katherine of Aragon was described in multiple things that I read as having reddish golden blonde or strawberry blonde hair. She already has what is called strawberry blonde, I would say. But yeah, it's not long enough. And I think it might be too thick, because I will separate the hair part the hair in the middle, put a ribbon, braid everything, and then wrap it around later, so that I then can put on the hat. I think this is called strawberry saran, but I don't really think it's a reddish blonde. I think it looks more greenish. But I guess I will combine those two, so it's not just those very high, pale blonde stuff. Let's cut away the hair. Let's completely change her. Quote, contemporary sources agree that Catherine was beautiful, with red gold hair and pale skin. The 23-year-old bride of the new king looked more like an English rose than a Spanish princess. End quote. The influence of Henry VIII's wives on Tudor fashion ideals. By Jennifer Rizzo. tudortimes.co.uk. Quote, though fairly short and plump, her bearing was described as regal. Her voice, low and resounding, commanded respect. End quote. 13.org/wnet/6wives. This is where we are now after the reroute, and I guess you can see that the head is rooted a lot more sparsely than I would do it normally, but I hope that this way we will have a thinner amount of hair so we can braid them. I am now going to heat the hair a little bit so it stays in the direction. This was my first mess up. I took a ribbon after I had heated it into place, braided both sides because I thought that was what I remembered from a video by the Tudor Tailor here on YouTube. Yeah, it was not what they showed. I did change it later, so forget about this step. I put her hair up, sprayed her with MSC after she was wrapped, and we can start with the repaint. While I'm doing that, I want to give you a quick overview over the rest of Catherine's life. One last thing before I start the repaint. First of all, I had to mix my own colors from the pan pastels that I have to be able to repaint her. And second of all, I tried to stay as pale, as light, as natural as possible. And I aimed for a similarity to the portraiture that I was working from. I didn't want a complete copy because I know that I'm not capable of that. I just wanted to make her look as close or as similar as possible. See it as a Barbie wearing a Katherine of Aragon cosplay. Maybe that explains you a little bit where I was coming from. Now on to some history. In 1513, Catherine was appointed regent of England while Henry went campaigning in France, even riding into battle herself against the Scots, heavily pregnant with a child she gave birth to only around 2 weeks later, which sadly, as so many of her and Henry's children, did not live long, or was even stillborn. Only one of their children was destined to live to adulthood, even claiming the throne, the later Mary I. After it became clear that Catherine would not be able to give Henry the heir he so desired, his ever-wandering eyes landed on Anne Boleyn, setting events into motion that altered England forever. To be able to get rid of his queen and trustful wife for over 20 years, he wanted the marriage to be annulled, which meant not a simple divorce, but that the Pope declared the marriage had never happened, which would have made Mary a bastard. When the Pope refused, Henry broke with the Church in Rome and established the Church of England, with the king as its head. Now able to grant himself his annulment, he married Anne, banned Catherine from court, moving her to different places until her death in 1536 at Kimbolton Castle. She never saw her daughter again, but she also never accepted the treatment and saw herself as Henry's wife to the end. Obviously, there are a lot of more informations you can gather about this exceptional woman, this extraordinary queen. I think Katherine of Aragon is such an interesting person with how much she did, how loyal and brave she was. And I think the betrayal of Henry was the worst when it came to her. Let's not get this mixed up. All of the 6 wives had a lot to go through with this man. And I think as a king, Henry was not that bad. But as a husband, oh my gosh. A little child throwing a tantrum. Anyway, Catherine is one of the queens I'm very fascinated by. And if you want to gather some more information about her, the YouTube channels I watched the most about the whole history of the Tudor court, History Calling, Reading the Past, and Royalty Now Studios. And the nice thing with the last one is they do digital recreations of their subjects, what they are, the historical person they talk about. And I think it was quite fascinating to see how they recreated Catherine in this format. So if you want to give it a go, I will link all of the YouTube channels and the other sources I used in the info box, and in a picture, or I will put it on the screen in the end. So if you want to go onto anything else, in the info box down below or at the end of the video, you will find a list. With the repaint now nearly done, I have to say this was freaking difficult. Normally I have far more contrast in the repaints, so you can do a lot more. Staying this natural and this, trying to make repaint that is more realistic, oh my gosh, that's not me. But I think she turned out quite nice in the end. I decided to don't give her lashes because you don't see them in the portraiture. And I decided to only gloss her eyes, not giving her any light reflections by putting a white dot somewhere, because, again, the aim was to be as natural, as realistic as possible when it comes to my skill level. So, this is the best I could do. Anyway, in the background I already created the whole dress while this was happening. So let's take a look at that. We will talk about the individual layers a bit more in detail when I am doing the doll for Jane Seymour, I think. But, just to say it, this was my attempt on a Spanish farthingale. Then we have a kirtle, and then we have the main gown. Normally you would wear a shift underneath. I skipped that because it would be too bulky. It already is quite bulky because I used velvet for the main gown. And yeah, I struggled quite a lot with this. This was the first Tudor dress that I tried to recreate as close as possible for me. If I would have used real silks and everything and made it 100% accurate, I think it would have been even more difficult. But this version already was quite a challenge for me. So it's not 100% accurate, but okay for the moment. I had to attach a little bit of satin ribbon onto the kirtle afterwards to cover up where you might see a little bit of it shining through. Originally you saw her joint, and to cover that up I had to attach some extra fabric. And if I really feel like it, I might redo this dress when I'm done with the last wife Catherine Parr, because I think by then I will have gotten used to these costumes a little bit more. Anyway, another thing, the neckline is a bit different, but it was very, 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 very difficult for me to get this done in this scale. I still don't get how some people can do 100% accurate costumes in Barbie size. It's, the dresses I stitched together for my 1-3 scale dolls were my relaxation dresses while I dreaded sewing this. So anyway, after she was put into everything, I thought it looked quite nice. I even was able to get her jewelry done halfway decently, with a lot of glue being involved. But yeah, then it was time to work on her headwear. And wow, that was interesting. We need to redo the whole braid or wrap piece part thing. So the difference is we still have the hair back here, but we start with a knot first. And then they did just wrap it around, wrap the ribbon around. It might even help with making it a lot less bulky, which would be very, very nice. It now looks slightly like this one character from Star Wars. But yeah, it should work a bit better now, he said, and then struggled to get this done for quite some time. In the end, I used pins and a new ribbon, or I had to re-wrap that ribbon multiple times, because I wanted to get it as flat as possible, and because nothing was helping and holding that in place, I then decided to stitch the two wraps into place onto her head. So yeah, my whole idea with having this removable, so if I ever want to display her with open hair, forget about it, she will live with her gabled hood forever. Speaking of which, we had a very complicated relationship with each other, because most of the information I was able to gather, I gathered from Samantha Bullat on YouTube and the Tudor Tailor, and both of them stated that they had hoods or the veils that were two parts. When I look at the portraiture of Katherine, I'm not so sure, because you can't see that the back is parted in any way, shape or form. For me, this looks slightly like it is one piece. And when I'm not completely mistaken, the gabled hood evolved from earlier styles like the wimple and everything, where you had a solid veil. So I decided to go with one solid piece, because it is possible that either both styles existed, or that in between the years it evolved. I'm not sure, and it seems like, from the information I could gather, even Tudor historians are not quite 100% sure about that, because we have only one sketch from Holbein where you can see it from the back, and that's more or less the only proof of the two veil thing. And obviously, when it was worn like Jane Seymour wore it later, you needed two veils, and for her I will do that, so we have both versions of the possible gabled hood. If we take out our picture that we are working from now again, I did do the black, white striped stuff as the Tudor Tailor suggests, by doing an extra piece that is wrapped around turban style. Samantha does it differently, I think. This is the piece I stitched together. And we will install that now onto her head. Do I remove the... maybe I remove the pin afterwards. Okay, I have to correct this now. This was the moment where I noticed it wasn't working. I tried to guess the shape I need to do for the hood by cutting a piece of cardboard and folding that. And I noticed it was, first of all, far too bulky, and second of all, the two wrapped pieces were already sliding off the head. So I then stitched it in place, put the ribbon thing on again, and then I did the hood piece. Well, as soon as the border is around it, it could possibly work. But we need to remove a bit. And then we need the picture again. Instead of making this out of cardboard, obviously I now want to recreate this out of fabric. For that, I am going to use some white fabric, white cotton, and put a wire inside. The original thing would have been made out of white buckram, which I think is a linen, and stiffened, and possibly with a wire as well, and then it would have been put on her head, which should work halfway decently in the end. Maybe now is the perfect time to say I am not a costume historian, or a historian at all. I am just a over-enthusiastic doll customizer who wanted to make a historic representation of a queen he likes, or a time period he enjoys. So take everything I said up to now and from now as possibly halfway factual right, but maybe wrong. So this piece, if I'm right, or if I was able to find the right information, was called a paste. And I decided to not only stiffen it with wire, but to use a wire mesh to have it basically able to hold its shape very well. So this was the first part. I think it's a paste. Let's hope it is one. If you are a historian and want to fake check all of my so far said things, please do it. Tell me what I did wrong, because I am just a mere little YouTuber, hairdresser, or ex-hairdresser who knows nothing about research. So thank you for listening to this. For what I think is called a habiliment, basically a decorative edge that is bejeweled, at least for royalty it was. I just folded the paste first and then traced the shape I had and mirrored that, then made a paste out of a habiliment out of it. I stitched that on directly. I covered it with a golden satin ribbon because she had something golden in the picture, and I think it worked quite okay. No one should look into the gabled hood, but or inside of the gabled hood, but it does look okay in the end, I think. And because I noticed how much the wire mesh thing poked my fingers at the back, where I didn't fold it under, I this time used just a piece of plastic. So very historical accurate. Anyway, it worked in the end. I stitched it onto the paste. It is still debated if the pieces of the gabled hood were pinned into place temporarily, were stitched together. No one really knows. That's as far as I could see or find out. It's really something not a lot of stuff is known about. There is a lot of guesswork involved, so I was okay with that. In the end, I pinned I even stitched some ribbons in the back so I could stabilize the shape because of the amount of hair that still was underneath. I really debated cutting everything off at this point just to have her with the gabled hood, because otherwise, it's still a little bit bulky underneath. Let's say it as it is. There is a house on Catherine's head. I already stitched the decorative part onto the paste? I think it's a paste. And then I attached 2 ribbons onto the back, because when we put it onto her head now, if we push it down quite nicely, it does look okay from the front, but it starts to bend outwards quite a lot. So I hope that by closing these, we can pull it in again, so it looks a bit more nice, more like the original. Okay, because we are nearing the half-hour mark, I'm speeding this up now. I attached the veil, which is basically just a 1/3 circle out of velvet that I hemmed, pinned into place and stitched onto the hood. I, in the end, removed it again, cut the whole thing down roughly a centimeter, I think, then stitched it on again. Yay. And for the last thing, the lappets, which is basically this ribbon that is stitched on top or laid on top, I just used a brocade ribbon, a gold one, and then folded that back, stitched it in place, and had the gabled hood. And I have to mention, oh yes, I have to mention, when I removed the centimeter, I then decided to stitch on 4 ribbons in the back, not only 2. So it's we have 2 points where we can secure it. Yeah. The last thing was making her girdle, and I was finally done with the first queen. So let's take a look at the pictures, and let's start with the one I was working from first. Now. Let me say, I'm quite happy with the result. Obviously, there are a lot of possible improvements, but I think for the first attempt of doing something like this, she turned out quite nice. Let me know what you think about her in the comments down below, and yeah, we will see us in another video. Until then. Bye.